Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Dr. Charlene Greenwood. I'm one of the presidents of the UK Kidney Association. Together with my fellow president, Professor Paul Cockwell, and the whole UKKA team, I'd like to welcome you to the official launch of the UK Kidney Association. In this session, we will give you the opportunity to hear a bit more about your organisation, the UK Kidney Association, in a series of short presentations from key members of the UKKA team. At the end, we'll offer you the opportunity to ask us any questions that you may have. Next slide, please. Okay, so I'm going to begin by talking about the UK Kidney Association and what it is. But to start off with, I wanted to talk a little bit about how we got here. After many years of talking about the concept of a single professional organisation and 2 years of concentrated engagement and discussions between the Renal Association and the British Renal Society, an overwhelming majority of the renal community voted in support of a merger between the two organisations. I'll take the opportunity now just to thank the teams on both sides for helping to make this happen, with a special mention to Martin Tull, the past president of the British Renal Society, who began these negotiations, and also to Graham Lipkin, the past president of the Renal Association, who worked tirelessly to help us deliver the merger. So our new organisation brings together into one professional member organisation the 71-year history of the Renal Association, the work of the UK Renal Registry, and also the multi-professional focus of the British Renal Society and its affiliate groups. Finally, we have a single professional organisation fit for purpose and reflective of our daily integrated, multi-professional, clinical and scientific approach. Next slide, please. And so the mission statement of the UK Kidney Association is that it exists to support the multi-professional team in the delivery of kidney care, education and research, enabling people to live well with kidney disease. Next slide, please. Of course, there are many opportunities and benefits of having a single professional organisation, which you will hear about in the series of presentations which we have for you today. But I'm just going to take the opportunity to mention a few key highlights. So in terms of improved delivery, there'll be enhanced outputs from joint committees, so working on the already successful joint partnerships in committees such as Patient Safety and the Kidney Quality Improvement Partnership, greater support and mentorship for professional development across the renal team. In terms of research opportunities, a coordinated approach to increased research capability and capacity, the facilitation of joint multi-professional team research applications as well as laboratory science, and also an ability to attract increased research funding. And Neil will talk more to that in his presentation. Next slide, please. A single professional organisation will also facilitate renal registry output by supporting PREMS, PROMS, the multi-professional audit, research opportunities in big data, as well as the development of Patient Knows Best. And James will talk more to that in his presentation. We will be able to create a single national renal patient council and be able to optimise and input the time of that expert patient group. And also expand the integrated special interest group development, which Paul will speak more to in his presentation. Next slide, please. So a single professional organisation will also allow for better coordination, greater impact and less duplication. So an improved renal stakeholder engagement, a single organisation being more attractive to industry partners, allowing us to offer opportunities in education, meeting support, as well as research. And also national lobbying being more effective as a whole community coordinated approach. Improved opportunities for communication, both within the renal community, so for healthcare professionals and patients, but also for external facing audiences. Combined support and influence from national bodies, so to improve education, training and CPD, and also strategic support for future renal unit staffing. So for us to help with workforce planning and to support the development of new roles like advanced practitioners, physician associates, and multi-professional team consultants. Next slide, please. Importantly, it also offers us financial efficiencies. So by combining our secretariats, we can achieve efficiencies of scale, and that enables us to offer secretariat and project management support for all of our professional groups, as well as our special interest groups, online CPD support through the development of a joint platform, and also really importantly, securing a joint national conference going forward with financial and quality benefits for the whole renal community. Next slide, please. So I'm now going to hand over to Professor Paul Cockwell, who's going to talk to us about the structure and cost of the organisation. Over to you, Paul.
Thanks very much, Charlene. Good afternoon, everybody. Many of you will have seen this before, so this is an overview of the structure of UK Kidney Association. And the reason for putting it up is that any organisations that we participate in and are members of, it's really important to get a view of what the core components of that is. And it's interesting, of course, coming into UKKA that we've actually got quite an extensive organisation in terms of its constituent parts. And those of you who are currently... Yeah, can everybody go on mute at the moment? Thanks. And so those of you who are currently participating in areas of either BRS or Renal Association, as we go into UK Kidney Association, those are very much continuing within the new organisation. Of course, you're all minded of the fact that we've been very much working as a single organisation in many areas as we go into UK Kidney Association itself. So let's put a little detail on some of these areas. Next slide, please. Thanks, Amy. So the overall governance responsibility of the organisation sits with the trustee board. And those of you who are familiar with the roles of trustees will recognise that this is crucial for giving overall assurance to the organisation. And we've listed some of the key responsibilities of the trustee board on this particular slide. Now, directly accountable to the trustee board and informing the trustee board will be committees for governance nominations, finance and risk, equality and diversity, and inclusion. And crucially, and I think this is something that we've all have to think through as we collectively develop UKKA, is integrating the patient voice through the Patient and Carer Council in a way that can directly embed patient priorities into UK Kidney Association and indeed inform work right across the organisation. Now, this is your organisation and you'll be electing the majority of the trustee board, and indeed you've done that as we go into UK Kidney Association, and then there are 6 appointed positions in addition, and those appointed positions include positions such as the Honorary Secretary and Honorary Treasurer, where there has to be real assurance about the skill sets of people who are taking those jobs forward. Next slide, please. So let's dig down into that overlook organogram in a little bit more detail here. And what you'll recognize is that many of the long-standing components that we've used on the professional side in UK Kidney over the last few years still here, and those areas in fact have grown extensively over the past 2 to 3 years or so, and you'll hear a little bit more about some of those areas. It's important to recognize that we've got a really strong core structural capability, and you'll hear about some of that structural capability. But what you see sitting in the middle of the overall structure are the special interest groups, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in about 10 minutes time. Now, the left-hand side represents the professional groups coming into UK Kidney Association. I will say a little bit as we move through the presentation in terms of where we're at in discussing with BRS affiliates as we come into UK Kidney Association. But you can also see that there are long established entities that sit within the Renal Association that come into those professional group areas. And we've missed it on this particular slide, there's then a substantial infrastructure to support external stakeholders such as the patient charities and such as Kidney Research UK and other major stakeholders in terms of care for people with kidney disease. Next slide, please. And then the last slide from me is just overviewing what it costs. You know, many of you are already paying members coming into UK Kidney Association. Others of you are members of affiliate bodies coming into UK Kidney Association. And what we're doing as we come into UKKA is coming in with a £10 nominal fee for new affiliate individual members and medical trainees. And that £10 nominal fee for membership will be until the 31st of December 2022. And we're really excited by that, the fact that we've been able to come in with what a substantially subsidized rate. And it's important that you speak to your colleagues who may not necessarily be members coming into UK Kidney Association about that. And then moving forward, we'll have an annual fee based on income bracket, self-declared income, and you can see the income brackets, and you can see the annual fees are really very tight in terms of the ask for membership of a national professional body. The top range of the annual fee sits to what members of the Renal Association on the medical consultant side were paying coming in, but you can see that below that there's banding related to income brackets. In terms of membership from a affiliate perspective, we're currently having some really good discussions with BRS affiliates, setting out what the financial structures are going to be going forward. And what we're looking to do is ensure that affiliates, as they come in as professional groups within UK Kidney Association, have a degree of financial control and ring-fence funds that are available for those professional groups to use for their specific purposes and aims. So that's an overview of the structure. There'll be a lot more detail made available to you that will come out over the next few weeks, and also an overview of the costs of membership as we go into UK Kidney Association. I'm going to now hand over to Karen, who will give a little more detail on the clinical committee side of things.
Very much, Paul. I'm Karen Jenkins. I'm a consultant nurse down in Canterbury, and I'm one of the clinical vice presidents of the new UK Kidney Association. My co-chair, Katie Vinan, also is going to work alongside me to oversee the clinical committees. Looking ahead, and Paul's sort of shown us already his sort of organogram, but the clinical committees is bringing all the things that have been great from the Renal Association and the British Renal Society together. And with the subheadings we've got for these committees at the moment include our patient information, our workforce, the clinical practice guidelines group, something new, which is infection prevention and pandemic management, looking at clinical services and sustainable kidney care. The plan with any of the clinical committees is the fact that they will link across the structure with our special interest groups. They will also feed into the Executive Council and with some of the core structures that are going to be in existence. For example, the Kidney Patient Safety Committee. Next slide, please, Sarah. Thank you. Just to give a little bit of an example about how this might work, looking at bringing how we will join up the clinical committees with the core structures, special interest groups, and the Executive Council. So the clinical committees, such as the Infection Prevention and Pandemic Management, would feed into the core structure of the Kidney Patient Safety Committee. And the Kidney Patient Safety Committee would then feed into the Executive Council. But the Clinical Committee also has the opportunity to feed into the Executive Council and into the special interest groups. And then again, the special interest groups will go into the Executive Council. Maybe look a little bit of a complicated diagram, but it's a way of showing how we're going to be doing a much more joined up approach and bringing all the clinical aspects together in the areas that are really important. And I think the Kidney Patient Safety Committee has been a really exemplary example of how we have worked together across the organisations. This is now very much a multi-professional committee, and the outputs have really shown the value of working together as a wider renal community. If you want to get involved in the clinical committees, our two clinical vice presidents, which are Katie and myself, will be points of contact, and we'll be overseeing all these committees. Any existing clinical committees, we will be reviewing the membership and ensuring that we have a wider multi-professional representation and giving the opportunity for new people to join us. If you want to get involved and you're interested, please contact us at ukk@renal.org and let us know your interest. Thank you. I'm now going to hand over to Neil to give us an overview of the academic committees. Thank you.
Thanks, Karen. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Neil Sheeran. I'm a kidney doctor from Newcastle and previously the academic vice president of the Renal Association, now moving forward into UK Kidney Association. And I'm presenting on behalf of myself and Helen Hurst, who is the multidisciplinary academic vice president for the UKKA. I was going to start by giving one example, which we've for many years now ran UK Kidney Week, which is a very good example of how effective we can be as a working together. And we've delivered this meeting for years now, and it's clearly more successful than when we were running separate meetings between the Renal Association and the BRS. So we've got a very good example of how working together can be very effective. In terms of education and training, we are hoping to have a committee now that's going to be co-chaired by a medic and a member of the MD team. We've already had our first joint meeting, co-chaired by Debbie Banerjee, a nephrologist from St George's, and Marissa Dainton, an academic nurse from Canterbury. Clearly, we've got very good examples of educational resources we've delivered separately, but we now need to deliver things that are joint initiatives that will serve for education and training across the whole of the MDT. I think similarly with laboratory and translational sciences, we're going to have a single committee co-chaired by Tim Bowen, who was the Renal Association Science Committee Chair, and Joe Chilcott, who was his equivalent in the BRS. We've clearly got to support all disciplines of science and recognise that renal science covers a whole host of different areas and involves a whole range of different specialties. And we've got to really make the UKKA relevant to the renal science community so people really see buy into the new organisation. I think we've got to recognise that renal science and science generally in academic institutions faces many challenges as we emerge from COVID, and we've got to really support that community. We've also got to identify new areas where we can bring more funding into renal disease. We recognise that renal disease is underfunded by many of the public funding bodies, and we really need to try and address that imbalance. We've also got to think of ways through the translational science of implementing many of the excellent research that's already done, but it takes a long time to move from publication of results through to implementation and improving patient care. And I think within that, the renal registry plays a very, very important role. It's an incredibly rich source of data that could really facilitate and accelerate the implementation of some of the excellent research that's done in renal disease across the patch. We've got to use the data effectively, but we've got to do it properly and in line with the governance that's required. And Dorothea Nitch is working on that as part of the UK Renal Registry. And we're planning to develop a committee that's going to build on the resources and the structures that are already present within the registry. We've been very successful in terms of the rare disease initiatives, and that the rare disease committee is chaired by Danny Gale. But I think we need to open that up to input from other members of the MDT who may provide a lot of the care for patients with rare diseases. And improving the research outputs from those rare diseases as patient groups is a key feature moving forward. The International Committee, which is now just recently taken over by Sunil Bandari, is currently chaired by a medic, and again has focused on international collaborations on the medical side. But really, there's no reason at all why that International Committee cannot focus on a much broader collaborations between the UK and nephrology and nephrologists, nurses, etc., who are working in developing countries, and to share the knowledge and experience we have within the United Kingdom. It's also very important that we develop and continue to develop relationships with external organisations. Kidney Research UK is a key funder of renal research in the UK, and we work closely with Kidney Research UK as part of the UK Kidney Research collaboration. And this is a relationship that we need to build and develop as we move forward. And the launch of the UK Kidney Association really is an opportunity to develop those relationships further. And again, we have other relationships with many, many other groups, both for education and research. And again, we need to develop and nurture those key relationships. I'm going to pass on, I think, to Paul next. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right, Neil. Thanks ever so much. and thanks, Amy, for moving the slides to the slide, which brings you back to the overall structure. So we've gone in a little bit more detail to the clinical affairs side, the academic affairs side, Karen and Neil. Let's come out again, and then just think about the central part of UK Kidney Association, which is the aspiration to use special interest groups as the vehicle for driving clinical change in each representative clinical area of kidney disease. And you can see some indicative special interest groups on the right of this slide. And you'll recognize some of these as already being active as we go into UK Kidney Association, in particular, living well with kidney disease, but also acute kidney injury. A start off with chronic kidney disease. There's a lot of work going on in supportive care. And indeed, we now started to look at other areas as well as we move to a special interest group based model. So what is a special interest group? Next slide, please, Amy. So it's as stated, a multi-professional group that leads on a specialty area of kidney care. Now, there's some real strong principles here, because one of our real challenges at a community level is to ensure that we do as little duplication as possible, and that we become more than the sum of our parts. And that's about us using our professional infrastructure as effectively as possible. And I think in my time through the Renal Association into UK Kidney Association in a leadership position, one of the big developments has been our ability to provide sustained and highly effective secretariat support as the organisation has grown. And that's a key thing for the special interest groups, is that if you become involved in a special interest group, you have core support from UK Kidney Association, and it's an entity which then includes contributions from those major constituent core parts of UK Kidney Association, including the registry, KQIP, the relevant clinical committees, and the relevant academic components as well. Next slide, please, Amy. So here's the operational principles as defined on the left-hand side. And what we're looking to do, and we're looking to do this organically, so you can't do these flat out from the start. You need to grow them from work that's currently in place. But what we're looking to do is, in each major area of clinical practice, develop work streams which include measurement data, improvement and implementation, and education, and then additional work streams as identified by you, the clinical community, you've got particular interests in a particular area. And we really will be looking to share best practice and avoid duplication and maximize the opportunities that we can have for education and research and development activities and so forth. And you can see some of the things that a SIG may do identified on the right-hand side of this slide. We've seen what the benefits are of a rapid response network in this period of time through COVID, as we put structures together to come out with guidelines, to come out with structural support, to work with stakeholder organizations to reflect patient needs, and to ensure that the bigger system on the statutory side through NHS England and the NHSs in the devolved nations are fully engaged with and enabled as much as possible. And those are the core principles that sit underneath special interest group, and some of the areas that we would be looking to develop as these groups grow. Next slide, please, Amy. And we have worked up now and signed off some documentation that sits underneath SIGs that you can all look at in your leisure, that include terms of reference, include how to set up a SIG, include how to develop work streams. But I've put some of the principles of SIGs up here, and as is going to be the case right across the organization, every component part of the organization is going to have a medical and multi-professional team co-chair. And in some cases with the SIGs, we're starting off with interim chairs. Those are people who are currently leading in their relevant area in the UK, who will take the SIG on for the first 12 to 18 months or so, and then chairs will subsequently be appointed following expressions of interest, and membership of the SIG will be open to all members of UKKA. And you've seen that in this period of time. You've seen how the SIGs have been developing, that invites have gone out for people to put in expressions of interest for participation. And we'll bring pre-existing work streams into the special interest group. And there's been examples of that. For example, at the moment, there's work going on in terms of defining a kidney failure risk equation resource for the UK. And Rupert Major, who's leading that, will come in and lead that as a work stream within the chronic kidney disease special interest group. There's a number of other examples of that as well. But there'll be seconded membership from the areas such as the registry and KQIP and so forth. And there'll be work across then. So the SIGs will be represented on registry, KQIP, patient safety, but patient safety, KQIP renal registry will also be represented across on the SIGs so that there's close talking through the core support components of UK Kidney Association going into it. Next slide, please, Amy. So this is the last slide, and I've stolen this off John Murray. So John's put this together as he's developed with others, the acute kidney injury special interest group. And of course, we had to really focus on acute kidney injury during COVID, particularly with patients on intensive care unit doing so badly when they had acute kidney injury requiring renal replacement therapy. And you're aware of the major guidance that came out and the structural support provided through the professional societies led by John and also people within the intensive care community as well. But a number of people on this call contributed to this. But John then has carried that work on, and we've now got work streams starting to roll with Will McCain coming in as co-lead of GIRF to share data informatics for acute kidney injury, so bringing that expertise in and registry input into that, and with a developing structure then of leadership and growth across a number of other work streams. So if you take that principle for acute kidney injury, you can then see the way that that could move across to other areas of clinical care and provide us with the right infrastructure that allows us to do the best we can with time through the professional body. So I'm going to hand over now. I think I'm handing over to James. It's a good link actually, because James is going to talk to us about the registry. You can think about how the registry can link into the other areas of UK Kidney Association that we've gone through so far.
Yeah,
James.
brilliant. So yeah, no, thank you very much, Paul. So for my part, it's a joy to be here this afternoon talking about the UK Renal Registry under the umbrella of the UKKA. And also just to make a little bit of sense of what I'm going to say, I think also acknowledging a situation where the UKKA is perhaps not in isolation, but working in a system with the Getting It Right First Time National Report, the Renal Services Transformation Programme, and the reawakening of the renal network structure. So the first slide is, so this is not really for me to tell you anything new, it is just to remind me to say that I think that I am a better clinician if I know the answers to some pretty basic questions that are going on in the renal unit around me. So how many people perhaps have reached kidney failure in my unit in the last month? What proportion of them have I given what I think most of us would recognise as the best care in those in whom it is possible to have a preemptive transplant? And equally and holistically, what proportion of them have I allowed to have a dignified death, having opted for a non-dialysis pathway? And then I think that the future that we're thinking about, the world that we're going to be working in is one where the way we measure outcomes is going to be broader than that, and that's ought to include, I ought to now increasingly think about how do my patients rate their experience, and for example around the shared decision making that we're doing together, and equally that even if my outcomes are fantastic, am I offering cost effective and ultimately therefore sustainable kidney care? Next slide, please. So just to remind you, and this again is to say something pretty self-evident really, so some things in the UK Renal Registry and under the umbrella, the UKKA umbrella, are going to evolve rather than revolutionise. We are still going to produce an annual report. The next one will be out in the next 2 or 3 weeks' time, and this time for the first time is going to have a chapter on chronic kidney disease, those with CKD 4 and 5 who we get data from some but not all units. We have got near complete coverage now in the acute kidney injury master patient index, so all but 2, so 190 out of 192 labs are now sending us data on acute kidney injury warning test scores, and we're going to repeat the analysis that we performed last year about 7 or 8 key measures to do with acute kidney injury. And as you will all well know that the UK Renal Registry co-produced, along with things like Kidney Care UK, the PREM survey illustrated on the right. Next slide, please. By way of advertisement, if you didn't know already, if you have interest in comparative audit, so this is something this is again is going to evolve rather than perhaps revolutionise. So this is the Renal Registry data portal hosted on the UKKA web pages. This is where increasingly we are going to make data available earlier as soon as we have it to publish. So for example, this is the new people starting on renal replacement therapy. The bars at the top are by region, the coloured bars by different treatment type. And this data, although the annual report is coming out in a few weeks' time, this data about our most recent 2019 incidence and prevalence data has been in our portal for the last 2 months or so. Next slide, please. Again, maybe this is, well, revolution would be too strong. Let's not get carried away. So, but again, some people don't look at the world as a single measure. They like the concept of how is a unit doing as a whole. And some people might express that in terms of a dashboard. And these took time with the annual report. This is a concept. This is using this, on the left, slices through funnel plots, where in Leicester's example, for 15 key measures, including 3 of them from the PREM, the 3 PREM measurements, where there is the most variation and the least good outcome, how Leicester as a whole performs against that range of measures. These are not, these are fairly predictable, and we've produced a lot of them. We've reproduced a lot of them from the GIRF National Report, updating the analysis in that. And Leicester is the little yellow triangle in the middle of each of the slices. If you like your dimension, if you like your data more two-dimensional, they will be supported behind by a funnel plot so that people can see themselves in comparison to other units, again against those 15 key measures. Next slide, please. So maybe this is the bit that, so maybe this is the bit where we start getting more revolutionary. So the criticism, I think, would still legitimately be that that's not timely enough, that we're perhaps not measuring exactly the right things anymore. And that the second is that the data collection is a burden rather than opportunity. And that last one I'm very sensitive about. So when we listen to Catherine in a moment about the quality improvement initiatives, we need to be saving some energy in order to do that rather than consume it all on collecting information. So how is the renal registry going to evolve? So that in the bottom of this slide. So the first is that fundamentally, I think a lot of the quality improvement over the next 2 or 3 years is going to be in the space between a GFR of 30 and the point of kidney failure, where people either, those who've opted for it, either have dialysis or preemptive renal transplant. And so whereas the registry has always been permissive to having that data in the past, the future, that we think should be the norm, that a GFR of 30 is the point at which we should start receiving information. Second thought is that our data set is has become bigger over time and is asking people to collect information which is hard to collect and on reflection would be better collected through linkage with other data sets. And so shortly we're going to put out for consultation our version 5 renal data set, which will be smaller, and the small number of items that we're going to propose to the renal community to add would be fairly predictable and around decision making and care planning. To be timely, we need the data more quickly. That's the UK Renal Data Collaborative daily feed. So that's a patient view, son or child of patient view feed that will allow not only data to flow for the purposes of a patient viewer, but would allow comparative audit on a much more contemporary basis. And if the renal services are prepared to take the pain of those steps, then we, the registry, would produce through a data portal data in a much more timely manner. Final slide, please. So how would I summarize that lot to you? So under the UKKA umbrella, I think that the key information about care planning is still crucial to providing and planning good care. I think that, as the GERF National Report demonstrates, most of what we need to measure we know. Quite a lot of measurement and comparison, I think, is already possible, despite the criticism about how contemporary it is. The next step would be to shorten the time. And although there are other ways of doing that, I would strongly believe that if we collaborate using the same language, i.e. the same data set, and send the data to one place through something like the UK RDC feed, we will end up with a sustainable vision for data for improvement for the future. At which point I'm going to stop and hand over to think about exactly that improvement by Catherine.
Thank you, James. Hello, everybody. My name's Catherine Stannard. I'm a KQIP Quality Improvement Programme Manager, and I'm just going to give you a brief whistle-stop tour of KQIP. So what is KQIP? We are the UK Kidney Association's quality improvement infrastructure, and we're a supportive and innovative partnership of people and organisations with governance embedded in the UKKA that supports people to improve kidney services using quality improvement. And we want to share when improvements are achieved and help to spread those successes to new centres so that they benefit as many patients as possible. And this diagram on the slide just gives an overview of who we are. So KQIP is all about partnership working and bringing people together. So we have a partnership board, national projects, which themselves have groups of experts guiding them, and then supporting the quality improvement delivery. We've got a group of programme managers who provide training in QI tools and project management and mentoring to people who are delivering improvements on the ground. So we know that the real change happens at that unit level, and that's where the programme managers offer help and support. And we do that by having monthly catch-ups, regular communications, offering further training locally for teams who are taking part in a KQIP project. Next slide, please. So one of the key benefits, we think, of KQIP is that we're embedded within the national UKKA. So we'll have a national as well as a local and regional perspective on improvements. And that means the programme managers and the operational KQIP group can act as a conduit between national drivers for change and local action. Next slide, please. So these are the principles of the KQIP programme. Firstly, we know that although everyone believes in it, improvement and change is not easy. And the people who can achieve it are the multi-professional kidney teams with patients on the ground, delivering and receiving care. So we offer training packages in quality improvement and leadership that are kidney care focused and build on learning from our national projects. And we also think that learning about QI is best done when you can apply it to something practical. So we deliver training whilst people are taking part in practical projects. And we believe in the power of collaboration and sharing. And sometimes that's actually all that's needed to reduce variation in outcomes. So when people sign up to a KQIP project, we make sure these improvement networks meet at least 4 times a year as a whole, and we encourage and support local teams to meet more regularly in between as well. Next slide, please. These are just some of the achievements that the programme have had to date. So we've delivered leadership, training, quality improvement training, and project delivery in most of the regions across England over the past 2 to 3 years. Next slide, please. And this is where we're heading. And we think that with all these building blocks, these are all the building blocks, of a future sustainable quality improvement infrastructure. So we'd like to build on what we've already got and put in place a QI toolkit, which includes practical workshops and webinars and mentoring, as well as online resources for the kidney community. We want to move from our tested projects and ideas and then scale up the things that work, creating hubs of learning and a library of existing and evaluated QI projects. And we want to develop a faculty of experts through special interest groups, partnership working with community, industry and kidney teams. And we want to develop a community of those kidney QI experts who can share and learn from each other and support others starting out on their improvement journey. So with these building blocks, our hope is that we can support sustainable kidney care improvements that work locally and that are also linked to national drivers such as Getting It Right First Time and the Renal Service Transformation Programme. Next slide, please. So that's just a very brief overview of KQIP and the principles that we're working by. And I just wanted to end by saying thank you to the internet and to MS Teams and Zoom, which have enabled collaboration and partnership working to continue for us in many parts of the country. But we really hope that soon we can move to a way of delivering our projects that looks a bit more like a mixture between the left-hand photos and the ones on the right. Thank you, and I think I'm going to hand over now to Ron and Amy.
Thank you, Catherine, and thank you. It's a real privilege to be here today, a really exciting moment, and a privilege for two reasons, I think. One, to be part of the start of something that's so exciting as this, but also a real privilege that being employed by the organisation, we're here and we have time dedicated to do this. And I'm very conscious that a lot of the outputs of the organisation actually come from volunteers. And so if I was asked what the role of our core structures and our core team is to do, it's to try and facilitate making that as much fun and as easy as possible for the people that are giving up their time to deliver such fantastic outputs. So whether that's me working with the Trust Board, who are a series of volunteers to sort strategy and governance, or it's another member of the team working to produce measurement strategies to help with the quality improvement side, you've already heard of two of the key parts. What I'd like to do is a brief jog through some of the support that you can expect. Paul mentioned in his presentation, the Secretariat has been a revolution in terms of the way that we're working. So it's important that you know who they are and the sorts of things that they do. And over the next probably 2 or 3 minutes, I'll give you an introduction to these people who can help you so much. The first is Amy. Amy heads up our Secretariat. She particularly spends time supporting the governance side, the trustees, lots of the governance committees, and ensuring all the systems and processes are in place to deliver. Sarah supports particularly the webinars, and lots of you may have tuned into some of those webinars that have been an excellent addition to our educational resource, but also ensuring that we deliver on our projects that we start. And there's nothing worse than if you're coming in as a volunteer, not feeling you've got the support and things just end up hanging in the air for a long period of time. Last person I'll mention in the Secretariat is Jodie, but not least, because she's the person who will initially, you're likely to be working with if you're a member of one of the committees or one of the special interest groups, and she links in with the rest of the team and feeds us in to help at any point in time. Do you want to do the next slide, please? So on top of that, there are a group of people you may meet a bit less often, but are nonetheless important to you. The first one I'll mention is Stephanie Locke. Now, Steph's job is to make sure that we keep afloat, that our books are balanced, which is sometimes a challenge with a chief executive like me, and we all like to spend money, but Steph keeps us on an even keel. But she's also really useful to anyone in a committee who manages to get a small grant or maybe some money from industry to take forward a piece of work. And I would advise Steph really does like to be involved early, and it does pay dividends. You avoid mistakes like not charging VAT, not looking at how you can avoid having to charge VAT through a grant rather than something else. So involving Steph at an early stage pays massive dividends. The second person I'll mention is Jen. She's our HR person at the UK Renal Registry, but also ensures that our appointments are representative into the UKK. So when we're looking at committee structure, she makes sure the processes are right. When we're looking at trustee appointments, committee chair appointments, and she's also working to generate data that shows that the leadership of the organisation is representative of your organisation. Now, most of us, if you're like me, pull our hair out when we start thinking about GDPR and all the information governance elements that we have to deal with in a modern organisation and modern society. And Tom is our expert in that. His main role is sorting out all of our Section 251s and other requirements to make sure we can hold patient data safely and securely. But he's always there for a quick piece of advice around whether a survey fits in with the regulations or whether an addition to the website is okay. The last person I'll mention is Caitlin, the newest addition to our team, but one of the most important in terms of how we get our messages out. as we become this larger organisation, one of the great advantages is being able to campaign together and being able to campaign with other charities. Caitlin links into the communications leads in all the other charities and works hard on things like the kidney days that we have. So the kidney charities together work really hard and are looking to see how we can campaign together around certain areas. She also deals with our Twitter handle and all our social media, but is also there to help people get their messages out from things like the special interest groups and the committees. So we're all here and we're all very friendly, and just grab one of us and we'll point you in the direction of the right person. So with that, I'll hand you back to Charlene.
Okay, so I'd like to first of all just thank all of the presenters and also the rest of the team at UKKA, and I really hope that this has been a good introduction to our new single professional organisation, and that it's whet your appetite to become involved with what we have to offer. I'm really happy to take any questions now, so I'm going to monitor the panel, but I might start off by just asking a couple of questions while the questions start to come in. So I was going to pick on Neil first and ask Neil about if you could explain a little bit more about the UKKRC and how the UKKA will interact with that to help with research provision.
Yeah, of course, Charlene. So many of you will be aware that the UKKRC was a tripartite organisation originally, jointly with Kidney Research UK, the BRS and the Renal Association. So with the merger of the Renal Association and BRS to form UKKA, it'll now be co-chaired, and Charlene is the co-chair of the UKKRC from the UK Kidney Association, and Jeremy Hughes from Kidney Research UK. And I think it's been an incredibly successful platform for bringing together the clinical study groups, which really cover all aspects of kidney patient care. And they've really led on the development of the research portfolio for work in kidney disease. And I think that's been a real success of joint working with Kidney Research UK, and that's something that needs to develop. It's also now looking to develop networks which cross-cut the CSGs, for example, medical technologies, that could actually feed into all of the areas of care, and so to be reactive to developments in the renal field. And those networks are very much outward looking, so looking to work with public funding bodies, NIHR, MRC, but also to collaborate with industry to develop medical technologies in this example. So it's an increasingly important organisation to facilitate clinical research in the UK, and I think that it's proven that as we work together as a relatively small community with organisations like Kidney Research UK and UKKA, how powerful those sorts of collaborations can be, and I think it's going to be a real opportunity now with UKKA and KR UK to move that forward.
That's brilliant. Thank you, Neil. Do put your questions into the chat. I was going to just ask Ron. So I think people will have seen on the structure about the operational leadership group, and I wondered if you wanted to just tell people a little bit about how that group has formed and what the day-to-day work is at the moment as we go into the new organisation.
Happy to do that, Charlene. Thank you. So the operational leadership group really started forming as the two organisations came together. It's consisted of the presidents, academic vice presidents, clinical vice presidents, and its work to date has been sorting out many of the issues in terms of how you sort out pricing structures, how you sort out governance structures, all of those sorts of issues. Going forward, it will probably form the heart of the organisation, meeting on a monthly basis, and have a lot of the key operational people, like people from KQIP, the registry, along with those trustees that are responsible for operational areas, such as the academic vice presidents and clinical vice presidents. And they'll be making sure that we're delivering against any agreed plans that we've got, that we're using our resources wisely and deploying them to support the group so that we can make sure that we get delivery. The way it's come together has been so exciting and so collaborative. It's been great fun.
Yeah, I second that. It's been a great way to start off the new organisation. I'm going to pose a question to Paul now and just ask him about how we will develop our relationship with the patient charities.
Yeah, thanks very much, Charlene. I mean, Neil spoke quite a lot on the research side there and about the collaborations with Kidney Research UK, and we're really focused on that. And one of the exciting things, I think, over this period of time has been seeing the way that both the professional and the patient organizations and the research organizations have been working together through Kidney Charities Together, which is a sort of national umbrella meeting of the leadership of those organizations. Are starting to mature, and it's interesting how things are pushed by change in time and the fact that we've had to really work fast and collaboratively in this current period, and that's continuing to come through. And when you look right across UK Kidney Association, as we go into it, you see that happening in real time. So Catherine, Ron, and myself were this morning on a call with multiple stakeholders, including patient charity, namely Kidney Care UK, and also with discussions developing in terms of collaborations with the NKF, but also with industry partners as well, talking about broader coalitions in terms of quality improvement, particularly sustaining the home therapies project that's gone on as a key project within KQIP. Many people will be familiar with that project, which Catherine's led on as program manager, which is Day Life. And these sort of collaborations become increasingly important as we go into this current period, where of course we're going to see big structural changes within the NHS. We've had GIRF come through with a series of recommendations that we really do want to implement, because they're recommendations that have come out of the community itself. And we've got the Renal Services Transformation Programme facilitating that. How do we as a national body work with our stakeholder organisations on the patient side in particular to really get the best out of those changes that are developing and work with those organizations? I think for one of the key things for us is how do we get a truly integrated organization going forward in terms of ensuring that the voice of the patients and the patient's charity, we have a very well-established patient and carer group within the registry coming into UKKA that's very effective and very wise and advises substantially in that particular area. But how do we extend that? We've got patient involvement across a lot of the clinical committees. Patient safety, for example, would be a good example of that, involvement in KQIP and so forth. But how do we get a structure that ensures that there's broad patient participation, understanding that people come into organizations perhaps for relatively short periods of time. They'll come in with a lot of energy, they'll contribute, and then they'll go out again. And we do that as individuals. We go through cycles where we have involvement at a leadership position, then we back off and other people come in and so forth. And the key thing there is the breadth of individuals that we can get involved, but the structures to be able to deliver that are really important. So that those external partnerships on the patient charity side with industry partners and with research organizations, really crucial for us to really nail over the next 6 to 12 months or so.
Lovely, thank you, Paul. We have got a couple of questions that have come in now. I'm going to direct this first one to Ron. So will there be any changes in our approach to working with industry and any new initiatives? I think you're on mute, Ron.
Yeah, sorry, we should have all learned that by now, shouldn't we? I think for a period of time, we've had a change in terms of our relationship with industry. And I can only see that growing. Of course, we've got to stick within the regulatory framework, which is probably stiffer for industry to work within than it is for us. But I think the opportunities for multiple partnerships with industry, the fact that we can bring the whole multi-professional team into relationships with industry, just strengthens the opportunity. Our regular industry day, we're seeing fantastic things like Day Life, where we have several industry partners come together to help work with us in a totally different way, where it is a true partnership rather than just give us your money and we'll do what we want with it. So I think that's just only going to grow over time. And I think things like Radar are another example where industry are working very closely with us. And we're seeing a lot of those things coming to fruition now. So I think we'll see more formalization of partnerships to make sure we're working within the regulatory framework, but also a different type of partnership.
Lovely. And anything further to add, Paul?
Yeah, I'd second what Ron's just said, and also say that we've got some really exciting collaborations developing with industry around education in several different areas. And, you know, industry are coming in collaboratively across organizations to work with us to provide support for the development of learning tools and education sets that we think will be really good for a number of the areas in which we're providing clinical care. And that's something, of course, that I think both industry partners and us as healthcare professionals are really focused on getting the governance structures right and the transparency side of things. But there's no doubt at all that those sorts of close working can be extremely fruitful in terms of their outputs.
Absolutely. I wonder whether, Ron, you could just tell us a little bit more about the role of the Patient Council, which is obviously very important and integral to the delivery of the work we do with UKKA.
I think the Patients Council has been a revelation to us in lots of different ways: challenging, rightly challenging, supportive in terms of helping us get access to data that maybe we wouldn't get access to. So when we're looking at data linkages, a letter from the Patients Council, a considered discussion around how they feel, and as a group, because they have a range of different views as to how you link data and what you use data for, is really good, because they understand, they're educated in what the organization does, but they feel in a position where they can challenge us. They've rightly stopped us doing some research projects where the patients hadn't been involved sufficiently. And they've also done some fantastic development work in terms of some of the infographics you've seen that go out to patients from places like the UK Renal Registry. And I think their remit will become broader and stronger within the new organisation, particularly linking into the governance. And on that group is representatives of the major patient charities as well. So it gives us yet another route where we can make sure there's a good conduit. And the way we get those patients, because they're real patients, we go out and we ask for expressions of interest across multiple units. And then we have a short interview and take almost anyone who is really interested in coming into the organisation and helping us. And they're such great people to work with.
Lovely. Thank you, Ron. I'm going to direct a question to Neil now. And this is a question asking whether the UKKA provides scholarships for international PhD students in nephrology. And I think I probably know what your answer is, but I wondered whether you could say about how we support and redirect people as necessary.
No, at the moment we don't support any PhD funding. We do, however, provide visiting fellowships jointly with the International Society of Nephrology and Kidney Research UK. So we provide opportunity usually for 2 people to visit from a developing country through the ISN fellowship scheme. So we support that financially. So we do provide that opportunity. But that's not a PhD program. That's for clinical training to enhance clinical skills. The Renal Association and the BRS really, but I think what we perhaps need to do is that we need to work with communities for people to take on that type of. I think across the research community, we're looking at and had discussions with Kidney Research UK, very much leading on this, is identifying the best way of developing research skills within trainees across the MDT. And maybe sometimes PhDs are not always the right route to take for that, and there may be other ways of getting people to develop research skills in parallel with developing their clinical skills, which may be more effective, both in terms of time and in terms of the available funding, than doing full PhDs.
Lovely. Okay, well, I think we've definitely answered all of the questions that have come in so far. Please do get in touch if you've got any other questions or you want to get involved with any aspect of UKKA. But we've come to the end of our webinar time and I don't want to keep you any longer. So have a wonderful evening. Thank you all very much for your time and we look forward to seeing you again soon. So goodbye from all of us and over and out.
Goodbye, everybody.
Bye-bye.